So, good morning.
Good morning.
Here at Vision Fellowship, First Baptist Church, our Bible study. Shirley's the only one here at the moment, but Doris is supposed to be showing up, so eventually we'll have one more at least. But we'll see. But we'll go ahead and do the Bible study and record it. So, let's have our word of prayer. Lord God, Lord, we thank you and praise you for your presence and grace to us. Lord, help us to hear what your word tells us about Jesus and about what he has done, and help it to impact our lives, make a difference to us. We ask your blessing and your presence, your love and your grace. In Jesus' name. So last time, we had several different short stories, but the last of those short stories, which is about going over the Sea of Galilee, is actually connected to this story. So we'll show the connection in a minute. But so it talks about Jesus one day decides he wants to go to the other side of the lake. He goes and he falls asleep, and of course the storm blows up. And they wake Jesus up. Don't you care we're going to die? And Jesus calms the storm. So we talked about that last time. I'm not going to talk about that again. But the connection is made at the beginning of this story, which is sometimes called the Gerasene demoniac or something like that. It's about a guy who's demon possessed. But this is where they were going. So it's directly connected to what they just experienced. They experienced Jesus' great power in calming the storm. They said, who is he? And then they come to shore and they meet this demonically, possessed guy. And Jesus has power over him. So the two stories are connected to each other. This is where Jesus is going. It isn't an accident that Jesus has gone to where this demonically possessed guy is to set him free. Jesus is the one who directed them to get in the boat and go across the lake. And this is where they were going. So it is connected. And since I don't want to pick on Shirley too much, I'll read a little bit, and then maybe I'll have Shirley read a little bit. So starting at verse 26, and we're in chapter 8 of Luke. Then they sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. When he got out on land, a demon-possessed man from the town met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes and did not stay in a house, but in the tomb. When he saw Jesus, he cried out, fell down before him, and said in a loud voice, what do you have to do with me, Jesus, you, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me. For he, meaning Jesus, had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and although he was guarded, bound by chains and shackles, he would snap at his strings and be driven by the demon into the deserted place. Okay, that's enough to start with. So the first thing is where we are. The Sea of Galilee is kind of an elongated oval. It's a little bit narrowed at the south end. So the area we call Galilee is all between the Sea of Galilee and the Mediterranean. So it's all west of the Sea of Galilee. So that area is all at least somewhat Jewish. There's mixed Gentiles in the area, there's Romans in the area, and things like that. That area is mostly Jewish. You cross the lake, and what Luke calls this is the region of the Gerasenes. It doesn't say he went to the town of Gerasa, which is a town on that side of the lake, but it's inland a little ways. Some Bible translations will read a different word there. They will read Gadarenes, or there's a third one, which escapes me at the moment. Gerasenes is probably the most likely. It's the one that's most directly on the eastern side of the lake. And it was a few miles, the town was a few miles inland, but that was still considered that region. So what Luke's describing is probably there. There is a town called Gadara, or Gadara, I'm not sure which pronunciation, but it's at the southern end, also on the east side, but at the southern end and a little bit down off of the north end of the River Jordan. So, and it's also inland or something. But it would be further down. It's not impossible, but probably the Gerasene area. The area that is described here later, a bunch of pigs dive into the water. So they go off basically a steep slope. And that fits the geography of that area, of the Gerasenes area. And most scholars think that that's the accurate translation. It also tends to be the one used in most of the oldest manuscripts. So we think that's right. So anyway, so if you pictured the lake, Capernaum and the other towns that Jesus visits regularly are all either at the north end or around the west side of the lake. So that's the area he goes around most of the time. This time he goes straight across the lake, which is a little bit unusual. And it's also an area entirely lived in by Gentiles. There might be a few Jews here, but in general, this is more of a Gentile area. So this is one place where Luke describes Jesus going to an area that's predominantly Gentiles, predominantly non-Jewish people. Galilee was mixed, but Gerasa was almost probably 95% Gentiles, something really high. There might have been a few Jews, but not a whole lot. Anyway, so he gets there. It says it's opposite Galilee because it's on the opposite side of the lake from Galilee. When he gets out on land, a demon-possessed man from the town met him. That's probably a somewhat more subtle description of what happens. I think the demon-possessed man probably charges at him or comes at him. And Jesus is right away saying, out of him, come out of him. Mm-hmm. So the demon doesn't come out right away, but he responds to Jesus. Now, what does he respond to Jesus? He says several things. Okay, so when it describes the man a little bit more. It says, he was demon-possessed. He was from the town, probably Gerasa, but it might be another town in that area. For a long time, he had worn no clothes. He did not stay in a house, but in the tombs. So this is an area where there are tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out, fell down before him, and said in a loud voice, "What do you have to do with me, Jesus, you Son of the Most High God?" At the end of the last story, what were the disciples asking? They were asking, who is this guy? Right. So here's an interesting thing. The demon-possessed guy knows right away, the Son of the Most High God. So the disciples haven't figured it out yet, but the demon knows. Now, the demon is not happy about this, right? He doesn't like the fact that he's the Son of the Most High God here, but he knows the truth. The truth doesn't help him because he's not going to believe in, follow Jesus, anything, do good, anything good. He's just afraid of Jesus, and he's afraid of punishment in the long run. So what do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High? I beg you, do not torment me. What's that about? Well, it seems that this demon, for whatever reason, knows his eschatology. He knows what to think, which is just a fancy word for things. Yeah. He knows that eventually the demons are all going to be gathered up and thrown into the pit. And hi, Doris, it's good to see you. So, not too bad. So we've just started the story of Jesus and the Gerasene demoniac, and we're talking about the first paragraph there. So we connected it with the story before because Jesus had gone across the lake intentionally, and this is where he was going. He was going to meet this guy. It's not a happenstance. It's an intention by Jesus. And, we saw the story of the calming of the sea. The disciples asked, who is he? And the demon-possessed man knows. He says, what have I to do with you, Son of the Most High God? So what do you have to do with me? I beg you, don't torment me. So the demon knows his theology. He knows that there's going to be an end of time where the Son of Man, the Son of God, conquers, and the demons are going to be conquered, and they're going to be tormented, and they're going to be thrown into the abyss. Luke 8, and we're around verse 27, 20. For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. So many times it had seized him, although he had been guarded and bound by chains and shackles, he would snap the restraints and be driven by a demon into the deserted places. Okay, so again, more description of the guy, how powerful he is as a demon-possessed man. No one could restrain him, no one could control him. What was going on with him? But Jesus has already said, come out of him to the demon. And then Jesus says, what is your name? Okay, this is verse 30. Okay. I guess I'll ask, let's see, how do we split this up? Doesn't split up real well. Well, anyways, Shirley, will you answer, read from there down to the end of that story, which is 39.
Sure. Okay. Jesus asked him, what is your name? Legion, he replied, because many demons had gone into him. And they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside. And the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return home and tell how much God has done for you." So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him.
Okay. So up to this point, we have Jesus telling the guy, the demons in the guy come out of him. The guy's responded. He knows who Jesus is, which, he knows because he's a spiritual being. He sees who Jesus is, not just with his physical eyes, but spiritually. And then Jesus asked, "What is your name?" Now, some people who are really into deliverance ministry think that this is part of the formula of delivering people. You've got to ask the demon its name so you can identify it, so you can cast it out. I don't think so. I don't think Jesus needs that kind of thing. Jesus didn't need it, he's the Son of God. He can do it without knowing the demon's name. It doesn't matter. So I don't think that's what Jesus is doing here anyway. I don't think Jesus is asking the demon his name. He's trying to get to the guy underneath and say, "Who are you?" He wants the person underneath to be able to come out. And so that's who he's trying to get to talk to him. Now, the demon doesn't let him. The demon answers. But I think when Jesus asks, "Who are you? What is your name?" He's trying to talk to the man who's been possessed, not the demons. Let the demons answer. And that's a matter of compassion. Legion, he says, and obviously this is the demons, because many demons had entered him, and they begged him not to banish them to the abyss. Now, that's kind of interesting because, again, end-time theology, we know that the demons will eventually all be cast into the abyss, but it's not supposed to happen yet. So that would be kind of out of time. But it also means that the abyss already exists, okay? Because the demon's afraid of it. So he knows the abyss exists. And that he's afraid of being cast there. And he knows Jesus has the power to do that. He could cast the demon into the abyss, even though it's not yet time for all the demons to be cast into the abyss. So that's possible. Anyway, so he begs him not to banish them to the abyss. And then we get this kind of weird dislocation. And there was a load of pigs grazing on the hillside. Huh?
Yeah. Not sheep, but pigs.
Pigs. Yeah, pigs grazing on the hillside. Okay. Now, pigs make it clear, again, that this is a Gentile area. The area of the Gerasenes is across the lake from the Galilee. It's on the other side of the lake. It's on the east side instead of the west side, where the west side is where all of the people are that Jesus normally works in. Capernaum, all the little towns are on the west side of the lake, or at the north end, and Gerasa is on the east side. So he's gone over here, but this is a Gentile area. Jews wouldn't raise pigs. Obviously, these Gentiles are raising pigs. For Jews, pigs are unclean. But for Gentiles, that was one of the common foods.
You just don't hear about it a lot in the Bible.
Yeah, it is present in the Old Testament. And some people who are scholars and also, know about food safety and stuff like that say, that maybe the reason God told them that was because, if you didn't know what you were doing, you could get trichinosis from pigs, which was commonly a problem. Now these days they learned how to kill the trichinosis so you can eat your pork without worrying about trichinosis, but it didn't used to be true. I remember when we were growing up, we were always told to cook the pork till it's, dead, because you don't want trichinosis. Now people serving pork medium rare, and no one worries about it. That's because they've learned how to kill the trichinosis. But so was that part of why God declared the pigs unclean? I don't know. But anyway, these Gentiles are raising pigs. So obviously they don't have much, they don't have much connection to Jewish stuff. They're raising pigs. Some have speculated that maybe these were Jews raising pigs, or fallen Jews raising pigs, and that's why Jesus allows the demons to go into the pigs. But nobody knows. It's kind of a strange thing, and we don't really know why. But so the demons beg Jesus to permit them to enter the pigs, and he gives them permission. Huh? What's that about? I have no idea, except that, in the Old Testament, they were unclean animals. So their destruction would be a judgment of God on people who are raising an unclean animal, an inappropriate animal for food. Maybe. We don't really know. I mean, it doesn't explain it, except that Jesus allowed them. And notice he has to allow them. When he cast it, he could have just cast them out and they would have had to wander in the atmosphere, I guess, or somewhere else. But he allows them to go in the pigs. But then the pigs killed themselves. So where did they go then? Oh. So it doesn't necessarily mean the spirits died with the pigs. So we don't know what happened. Maybe they went into the fish. Who knows? But we really don't know. Why does Jesus do this? I think it has more to do with the people keeping the pigs and the town than it does, and the guy he's delivering, than it does the pigs themselves. The pig herders are going, all my pigs just plunged off the cliff and died. And this guy did it. They're blaming Jesus. And they may see that he's delivered this guy, but they haven't figured out how important that is yet, or what's going on yet. So they run back to town and say, there's this guy, he did something and all our pigs ran off the cliff. Come out and see who he is, see what's going on here, because it's not our fault that we lost all the pigs, the town's pigs. So they come back and they see Jesus, and they see the guy who's been crazy with demons for years, sitting there, clothed, in his right mind, at Jesus' feet, and Jesus is teaching him. How long did this take? How long does Jesus teach him? We don't really know. Okay, remember, biblical stories are often compressed time-wise. So even though this story gives you the impression this all happened in an hour, it may have happened over several days. And Jesus may have had some time with the guy to teach him and to do some stuff with him before everybody comes out and says, who the heck are you and why did you kill all our pigs? So they came to Jesus and they found the man with the demons had departed from, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. Now, these are Gentiles. They're probably either polytheists or something else. They're probably very superstitious. And they probably look at Jesus as some kind of magician they don't want around, especially if it kills all their pigs. So that's their reaction to it. They're very afraid of him. Whose power is it? This is a different kind of fear than the disciples. Remember, we're connecting this to the story of the calming of the sea, because that story is a direct lead-in to this story. This is where they were going in the boat. They were going to Gerasa, to the region of the Gerasenes, in the boat. Jesus calms the sea. The disciples say, who is this guy? But they're in awe. They are afraid, but they're in awe. They're still following him. The townspeople in response are in awe, but please leave. Now, it's a very different reaction. It's a very different reaction. So I think this can be clearly a good indicator of the difference between people who do see the power of God in the gospel, in the good news. And some people say, who is this? What is this? I don't understand it, but I want it, which is the disciples' reaction. Or their reaction can be, who is this? I don't want to have anything to do with this. This is going to change my life too much. Kill my pigs. But it's also, it would change my life too much because it's holy, it's different, and I don't want my life changed that way. So there are people in the world who react like this town did, very much like this town. So, meanwhile, the eyewitnesses reported to them what happened. Okay. How the demon-possessed man was delivered. So, and they're not happy that the demon-possessed man is delivered. They just want to get rid of Jesus. Right? So their reaction is not one of, oh, great, crazy Uncle Fred is finally sane again because he's been delivered from demons. Their reaction is, oh, we don't want this guy around, the guy who delivered it. We don't want this kind of thing around. It scares them too much. And they're not willing to see that it might be the power of the true God among them. Again, people have that reaction to Christians sometimes. They see your love and your grace and your presence, and their reaction to you is, we don't want to have anything to do with you because it's too frightening for us, because we want to manage our own lives our own way. And that's essentially the town's reaction. The town's reaction is that. So the people of the Gerasene region, this isn't just the town, this is the whole region. Remember, the town's a few miles inland, so the coastline is the Gerasene region, but there's not a town right on the coast there. So the tombs are near the coastline, but the town is further in. So this whole region, people from this whole region have come out. And again, I think this is compressed. I think this may happen over several days. That people come out to see who Jesus is. They keep getting told the story over again, what happened. And none of them want Jesus to stick around. They're not coming and saying, oh, yeah, that sounds really interesting, and I'm glad, crazy Uncle Fred was delivered. Why don't you teach me some? None of them are having that reaction. The only guy who has a good reaction to Jesus is
the demon-possessed
man, the guy who was delivered. He's the only one. And that's interesting. So, all the people of the Gerasene asked him to leave because they were gripped by great fear. So Jesus gets in the boat and it returns. Now that's again a summary statement because what happens next is actually happens before he gets in the boat, obviously. Because the last paragraph here happens before he gets in the boat. It couldn't have happened after he was in the boat. After he was in the boat, the guy would have had to swim to shore. It doesn't make sense. So very typical Bible storytelling. You complete one section of the story and then you may go back and tell another section. And even though this is a very short section, that's what he's doing. He's now telling the story of the man who's been delivered, what happened to him. After he says, well, the people wanted Jesus to leave, so Jesus left. Okay, so back up a little bit. We're doing a little flashback here for all of you who like flashbacks in movies. I don't like flashbacks in movies, but the Bible does flashbacks quite a bit. The man whom the demon had departed kept begging Jesus to go with him. Okay, so he wants to go with Jesus and become Jesus' disciple. But Jesus doesn't let him, which I think is really interesting. It's also one of the reasons I think Jesus must have stuck around for at least a few days so that he got some basic teaching from Jesus. But it may also mean that this guy was Jewish and most of the people around him were not. And so he understood that Jesus really was the Messiah and really was the Son of God. When the demons said it, he believed it. And he believed it for good and for real. And he believed the good news to him, and that he was forgiven his sin, and that he was set free. So what does Jesus do? Jesus makes him into a missionary, an evangelist. He sends him back to town. And he says, tell everybody what God did for you. So even though the initial reaction of all these people to Jesus was negative, Jesus sends this one guy who's been delivered from the demons back into the same region, same town area, and says, tell people what God did for you. And that's interesting, because we often expect that, if Jesus showed up and preached to people, everybody would fall on their knees, confess Jesus as Lord, but it certainly doesn't happen here. But Jesus expects that if this guy goes back and continues to tell them what happened, that some people will go, oh yeah, I heard about that. I was really afraid of Jesus. But he really made that difference to you. Wow, maybe I should believe instead of being just afraid. So I think Jesus is not sending him back to just be a failure. I don't think Jesus would have done that. I think Jesus sends this guy back because there are people who will believe after they hear it several times, after they hear his testimony of what happened. They will believe it. And so Jesus is sending this guy back. So maybe his family can believe, maybe some friends of his can believe, maybe some other people who can believe, who didn't initially believe, who did initially wanted to send Jesus away and didn't want to have anything to do with Jesus. But maybe in the long run, because this guy gives his testimony, maybe some of them will believe.
Also, too, Jesus chased out the demons, but then he spent time with the man. I mean, imagine the psychotherapy he would have to go through to adjust to living a normal life.
Right.
And I think that, again, like I said, these stories get compressed and we tend to read them as if they happened all in the amount of time it takes us to read them practically, or a few hours. But I think this happened over several days. And so I think you're right, Doris. This guy did have the time to learn from Jesus. It says the guy sat at Jesus' feet. That is symbolic of someone who's
What?
learning, right? Who else did that? Who else was recorded as sitting at Jesus' feet?
Man.
Mary, of Mary and Martha, because she chose to listen to Jesus' teaching. And Martha complained about it, of course. But the point was that Mary was choosing to hear Jesus' teaching. That was what was symbolized by, Mary sitting at Jesus' feet. And I think the same thing is symbolized here, that when it says he sat at Jesus' feet, that doesn't mean he did that for 2 minutes till the people came along. That means as long as Jesus is there, he absorbed everything that Jesus would teach him. And it may well have been several days. It could have been a couple weeks. Who knows? We don't know. Luke doesn't tell us how long this took. He just gives us the pattern. So we need to understand that. Okay.
Can you imagine living in a tomb? I can't even imagine living in a tomb. In the beginning, when you lived in that tomb, I can't even imagine.
So tombs in those days were often either naturally occurring caves or caves that had been then expanded and cut out. So one reason people think that the tombs that they're talking about here are at the coastline is because on this coastline, on the cliff edges, there are naturally occurring caves. And so the naturally occurring caves occur, and then people go in and carve out a flat space to put the body, and they put a stone in front of the place. If they were, once the body had disintegrated, they collected, the pattern in those days was to collect the bones and put them into what was called a bone box, about this size, big enough for the longest bones. And all the bones would be put in a box and a lid put on it. And by the way, they found, a few years ago, they found a bone box that said, James, brother of Jesus, on it.
Wow.
We don't know that it is the James, the brother of Jesus, because both of those are common names. But certainly gives you food for thought,
It does make you wonder.
So, anyway, so we're going to end there because the next story is also a long story and we don't want to start it. So we're going to end there today. So, any other thoughts or questions? Or anything else? It's a very interesting and powerful story. Has a lot of implications, and even with the stuff I talked about today, we've probably only scratched the surface of what this story is about. So, anyway, prayer requests.
This morning, my daughter Karen has COVID.
Oh.
She's had all her shots, so.
So Sharon's sister Deborah has come in from Ohio again. She's here for a few days. Sharon was really kind of down Friday morning or Saturday morning. It's hard for me doing the same thing every morning with her, so it's hard for me to connect right post Friday. She was kind of down, and she said, "I really want my sister." And I said, "Mary?" And she said, "No, Debbie." So I said, "Well, I'll call her and see if she's able to come." I know Debbie's really involved in politics in her hometown, so, and the primaries are coming up in Ohio too. I don't know when they're on in Ohio. She's really involved in the real conservative Republican stuff. So she was reluctant to leave, but she came. She's going to stay until Saturday or something for a few days. So that's good. Sharon woke up very agitated this morning. Didn't want Abe to touch her. She's gotten along really well with this every day. So she's had a few days where she's had this kind of agitation before. A couple times in the nursing home, a couple once in the hospital. So it seems to happen every once in a while. So just pray for her that she will continue to be good, normal self, calm. And, but Debbie and I went kind of calmed her down. Debbie helped though. So that calm shut down. So, and eventually she met Joan. Help out. But it took a while. So that's good. So what's going on? Can't be just what's going on in this great. What's that? So that's it. Prayer for my sister. My sister Kathy is having surgery on Friday. She has cancer in one kidney and connecting to between the kidney and the bladder. If it's contained within the kidney, they're going to take out the kidney. So depending on what kidney. If it's contained within the kidney, it's essentially a cure because the kidneys and the tube are very well sealed themselves. But if it's metastasized, then it's a very poor prognosis because it's tiny cancer that will spread pretty rapidly. So very my sister, she's in Delaware, where surgery at Christian Hospital. So her husband and her son. I talked about going down. And actually, Debbie gave me a chance to make her do that. But she said she's still supposed to isolate before she goes into the surgery and stuff. So he's and her husband, Jeff, and son, Greg. They're blessings both. It's my oldest sister. She's about 8 years old.
But she worked took care of my mother. Wouldn't go into years.
She took care of my father. She took care of my mom for a while. She was uncomfortable. So she did come to the graveside service. But, she was very close to me. She was much closer to my dad and mom.
But we keep praying for Andrew and Cassie. Discouragement and no progress. Tom,
Mark.
And my friend's granddaughter Lisa, she is home now, but she does go back to town, but she is home. They feel that she'll get stronger at home than she will in the hospital. So. But the surgery is still on for July. She has leukemia and she has a bone marrow transplant that they do until July. And
Yeah.
she's 35.
Because of COVID and all the stuff that operations and stuff way backed up. Because my sister found out about the cancer a couple of months ago. And he wanted to do surgery as soon as possible. And April 29th was the first date that he had. A month and a half ago, we decided that we'd go ahead with the surgery. So it took a month and a half as a surgical issue for someone with cancer.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's not like it's an optional surgery or something like that. So the medical system's all backed up too. Everything's backed up. Anyway, okay, so let's have prayer. Doris, you can start us and I'll finish us.
Lord, we come before you with thanks for that you care for us. You sent your son Jesus Christ for our sins, and to show us how to follow us and to live others. We pray, Lord, for guidance, make the right choices in our life, and to hear our prayers and answer them. We pray for you this prayer for Sharon, for Bob, who the needs are, comfort, endurance, and we pray for Shadow's mom, Corbin, and Marcia, and Pastor Rob's sister, she prayed and opened the door to surgery period. We pray for Shirley's friend, who has leukemia, and to wait until July before she can get another transfer. Let's pray that we know keep the years of his spreading and so that when she does get her grades, it's going to be more successful. We pray, Lord, that you might be with the people in the community, with the leaders, the world leaders, and the people, help them to realize that people that we pray don't want to know. We pray for the people of Russia who do not know truly what's going on. And we pray for the families that have been evacuated. We're so thankful for the bordering countries that have opened their borders to welcome these people and to care for them and to make them. We let this be, Lord, direct their thoughts and actions to their hearts to you and to the streets of the kingdom. We ask all this in Jesus Christ and the Lord of mercy.
Lord God, we thank you and praise you for your grace to us in the deliverance of this man that we studied today. We see your power over demons and over evil. We see your power to deliver and make whole a man who was greatly tortured. And we thank you that you have delivered and made whole each one of us in different ways, Lord, through the cross, dying for us and blessing us. That your spirit and your power are in us and making us whole in your power and grace. We thank you that you're here. We thank you for your love. And we thank you for your grace. Lord, we ask you to be with us in all that we do and for you. In Jesus' name.